Welcome into another edition of Inside Carolina's Next Level. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Greg Barnes, and we've got two special guests. If you're listening to this on the YouTube version, I know you recognize one of them, Melvin Scott, former national champion for North Carolina basketball, and the other is Mr. Will Blythe. Will has written a book several years ago, but it is still very relevant. Melvin, let me ask you out of the gate, since I haven't talked to you before about it. You obviously played in it, were a big part of it. Last year was probably the biggest game ever in it. From a former player standpoint, how has this Carolina Duke rivalry changed for you, being a guy that was in the arena versus now being a guy that's watching the game like the rest of us?
Um, I think one thing that is the same, I'll never go over there to watch a game. So that will always be from the comfort of my home. I'll never go over to Duke and watch it. I am taking my oldest boy to the game on Saturday, so we'll be in there to watch that. Um, I think that right before our eyes, I mean, I'm 41 years old now. I never thought I'd see the day. Well, you know it's coming, but you don't expect it so soon or whatever. Where there's no Coach K, uh, there's no Dean Smith, there's no Coach Guthridge, there's no Coach Roy Williams in this rivalry. So I think it's happening before our eyes. We're going to see new villains, uh, new good guys, bad guys. You know, everyone used to hate Christian Laettner, the JJ Reddicks, or whatever have you. But we're going to see new villains and new stars emerge from this rivalry, and you know, the coach over there and Coach Hubert just new people at the helm. So it's interesting to see. And just to piggyback on last year, winning those two games, especially the first one at Cameron, and kind of putting the nail in the coffin for that, that was awesome. They didn't have to win another game last year. I would have been fine with that. And then going to down to New Orleans and watching that Final Four matchup, winning that was amazing. So those last two wins against Coach K, I know I can speak for myself as a former player and a guy that was in that rivalry. That was enough for me. So,
Melvin, that's a great segue because I was going to bring up Will's book, which it really needs no introduction if you're a North Carolina fan. But I feel like I'm getting old, Will, just kind of thinking back the first time I read it. But it came out
Me
in
too.
2006, correct?
Yes.
Yes. But to hate like this is to be happy forever. A thoroughly obsessive, intermittently uplifting, and occasionally unbiased account of the Duke North Carolina rivalry. It is a cult classic for North Carolina fans for sure. And Melvin brings up a good point there because when I watched the first game between Carolina and Duke earlier this year, I was a little surprised about how big of fanfare there was because, as Melvin said, I had the luxury of being courtside for the game at Cameron last year, Coach K's retirement tour that North Carolina upended. And I was also fortunate enough to be in New Orleans for the Final Four victory. After that Final Four game, I think I was not alone, but I think a lot of North Carolina fans assumed the rivalry was dead. And so for people to make a big deal about it again a couple weeks ago, I was a little bit taken off guard. Is the rivalry dead just because North Carolina did what it was able to do against Coach K in his last two games?
My answer to that is no, that the rivalry is eternal. It's like God versus Satan, as I was saying. And I think that it seemed for a moment when John Shard came in, and of course Hubert's there, that there was going to be a little more equanimity, a little more ease back and forth. But the truth of the matter is, I think there's such a cultural and economic divide between Duke and Carolina that's embodied actually in the basketball teams as well. And I don't think that's going away. And, it's something I remember my father would always tell this joke about Duke and UNC. And he would say, how can you tell the difference between a Carolina man and a Duke man? And he would say, a Duke man walks down the street like he owns the entire world. A Carolina man walks down the street like he doesn't give a damn. And I think that sensibility is still there. in the basketball world. And the more I think about it, I think that, and this is something I read about from you, Greg, in regard to football and the coaching at UNC and so on. But I think with basketball at UNC, and Duke, the success has been so great that if a team begins to go downhill in some respect, I think the coach will probably be let go. It's a little different, it seems, with football. And therefore, I think there's always going to be a really powerful rivalry between the two teams, and it's exciting. What can I say? And Melvin was a great portion of that, and he got to experience it in person, which was fun to see too.
For sure. From a fan perspective, Will, you wrote your book about kind of the time period when Melvin, of course, was there. Chris Lang. I grew up in Gastonia. I played with Chris at the YMCA quite a bit growing up. But that was during a time of transition. And I think there was a lot of concern for North Carolina fans when you go from Dean and you go to Bill Guthridge, and then with what happened with Matt Doherty, you're kind of thinking, is what we've known for a long time gone forever? And of course, that wasn't the case with Roy Williams. So the impact that Hubert Davis has had, especially with the national championship game last year, was that enough to kind of ease your concerns in that regard, in terms of you think the program's in a good position now kind of moving forward, even though there may be some ups and downs?
Well, that's a good question. I think that Hubert, to me, already looks like a great recruiter. When I've watched Ian Jackson play, and I just think that there's a lot of, he's good at that. And I think that this is actually something I'm curious to ask Melvin about too. Is last year we became for a while a pretty good 3-point shooting team compared to past seasons, and this year, something has happened in that respect, and I'm curious as to what Melvin thinks that might be, because Melvin was a very good 3-point shooter too. But at any rate, I think under Hubert we've got great potential, and again, I think 2024 is going to be a good indication of that. So,
Melvin, I want to bring you in on that issue, or that question, as well as a couple others here, because I think they're all relevant, especially to this North Carolina team the last couple of years. But let's talk about the 3-point shooting. Obviously, you great at it, a great teacher of it now. You've in the coaching arena at North Carolina Central. But what goes through a shooter's mind when they know they're a good shooter, they've been a good shooter in the past, and they can't throw it in the ocean? Obviously, Carolina had some success the other night, but this season on the whole, and quite frankly, for a couple of years, they've struggled more often than not. So just give us the mind of a shooter and how that works.
Well, I think it's rhythm, man. Rhythm is everything, and that can be a result of the type of the quality shots you're getting or taking, and getting guys good shots. So I think as we've seen, it's just been a pressing issue about making shots, and I want to step up. I want to make the big shot, and maybe that's an extra swing to get a guy in rhythm, or an inside-outside, as traditionally UNC has been. And I was talking to a couple of guys last night. I was over there shooting with Trey Styles, and he was just like, man, when we're making shots, nobody can beat us. I'm like, absolutely. And it looked like you guys were in rhythm. So when you got those rhythm shots, and what I teach now is the quality of shots. Like, if you're inside out, if you extra swing, and then your percentages go up. I mean, we've all watched this season now. We're just pressing to make shots. And I think it's rhythm. It's all rhythm. When you're getting the quality of shots, they'll go in, especially with our team. We got guys that can knock in shots.
What's the hardest part for a guy to understand at Carolina when you're talking about a good shot versus a great shot? Because we've seen a lot of times where that one more pass may be a great shot, but maybe Caleb Love or RJ, they had a good shot. How difficult is that as a coach to get players to understand that, yes, that's a pretty good shot, but that guy in the corner had a great one?
Yeah. I just think, everybody wants to be the hero and the man. And I think we got great guys on our team. And, all those guys coming back, they feel like they have to take it on their own shoulders. I got to be the man. They're expecting me to be like I was last year when maybe you're averaging 3 or 4 points less than last year because everyone's involved now. You got more scorers, more shooters. So that's just that thing. And the toughest part as a shooter is getting out of your own head. Like you miss a few, you have to literally put that behind you and focus on the next one. And, just being a good teammate, like, okay, I'm going to get my guy a shot. And if you're penetrating and being aggressive to get your guy a shot or set a really good screen, 9 times out of 10, the ball's going to find you and you'll be in rhythm to knock in the shot. So just less of I and me and more of we. And we'll see us make a lot of shots going into the tournament, ACC tournament, and then NCAA play.
Yeah, it just looks like absolutely when they are in that mode, swing it, one more pass, another look.
Yes.
The ball goes in the basket a lot more. Let me ask you another question. I think about you a lot when I'm watching guys come off the bench and either they struggle or they make a play that's really important. And I go back and I think of the NCAA tournament run where you had to come in and make some big foul shots.
Yes.
Just sort of discuss that mindset. Hubert Davis always says, guys are going to get an opportunity. I can't tell them when, only that it's coming. Well, Roy Williams had a pretty set substitution pattern. I mean, guys were going to get in at certain times, especially early in the season. Talk about it from a guy that came off the bench in some very, very high pressure situations. You mentioned Dontrez Styles just a second ago. He hits a 3 last season in the tournament that probably saves the year. Or we're not having any of this discussion because the run ends against Baylor most likely if he doesn't do that. Just sort of give me that perspective again from a guy that maybe not be playing 35 minutes, but is just as important as the guys that do.
I'm glad you asked that. I want to be very transparent. My junior year, I played 33 minutes a game, and we picked up Quentin Thomas and Marvin Williams. So the next year, my minutes decreased significantly, and I wasn't liking it. I didn't like it at all. And so I got in my own way. I was being selfish about it. I was not being a good teammate. And then halfway through the season, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy this run because I think we're going to do something special. And one game, Rashad McCants go down. We're at NC State. I knock in 4 threes coming off the bench. Raymond gets in foul trouble that Villanova game. And I'm just in a good mind space. And one thing I talked to Dontrez last night, I was in a good mind space. I was happy. I was actually joking. And some of the guys were like, hey, man, I like having fun. My best time on the court, when I'm really good, I'm having fun. And so those free throws were really easy because I was being a good teammate. I had a positive attitude. And I stayed ready so I didn't have to get ready. And exact words last night, I'm like, Dontrez, people are still talking about that shot you made against Baylor. Like, that's so huge because you were ready for the moment. You got in, you just was ready. Now, and I tell them, being ready isn't always making a shot. Being ready is diving on the loose ball, getting those 50-50 balls. Just coming in and giving positive energy and minutes and not hurting your team. And that's one thing I try to teach the women at North Carolina Central. The high school I coach here with my son, like just come in and don't hurt us. Don't be a negative, like be a positive. And that might be making an extra pass or help side defense. You can affect the game in many ways than just scoring and shooting the basketball. And so that's a great point. And he told me he struggled most of the year. And it's hard coming off the bench and being ready and playing 5 minutes or 10 minutes a game. But he's just going to ride it out and be very positive. And I'm like, if we win, you win, because we won a national championship, and we had 7 guys play professional basketball. 4 guys went lottery, and a guy named Marvin Williams did not start a game for us, not one, and he went number 2 in the draft because we kept winning. And when you're a winner, everyone eats. So I was just preaching to Dontrez last night about this mentality, and he's in the good spirits. I'm like, bro, your time is going to come. Just stay the course and be a great teammate.
Well, and if Melvin hit that shot, the free throw, if you remember against Villanova back in 2005, we might not have won the national championship that year. So, I mean, he really came off the bench incredibly well his senior year.
Yeah, for sure. And Melvin, I think your class's career arc as Tar Heels is probably the most fascinating, at least in my lifetime, in terms of, at North Carolina levels, really going through a difficult start and then finishing your career as national champion. And I think that's just a phenomenal story. North Carolina, of course, is in year number 2 under Hubert Davis. You went through the same type of coaching transition. What is the challenge there for players? I know you talked about kind of minutes, once Roy got in and got settled. But in terms of going from one coaching style to another, in terms of how they approach and connect with the players, how challenging is that for a player at a program like North Carolina to be able to adapt and kind of change maybe your approach a little bit to meet what the new coach wants?
It's very difficult. And, as fans, well, I'm a fan now. I don't play it at that level anymore. We're watching, and we expect these guys, the All-Americans, you're at Carolina, you got to make that shot. It's tough. It's not easy. And, trusting the process. Everyone, that's easier said than done. But really, if you buy into what the coach wants to do, and obviously we saw, Coach Hubert, he's doing a great job. Great guy. If you buy into the team concept, the team, you'll do well. So it's not easy. It's very difficult as a player, as a competitor. It's just you have to just trust what the coach is saying. Obviously, coach played on a high level. He played in the NBA. He knows talent. He can recruit his butt off. He can coach. So just trusting that and buying into whatever we're going to do, we're all going to do it together.
That's good. Will, as we turn into the Duke Carolina specific portion of this, I did want to ask this question. When you wrote "To hate like this is to be happy forever," you had quite the villain to write about in Coach K, right? I think all Carolina fans can relate to that. Does John Shire have that potential?
I'm afraid he might not, because remember when Coach K came in 1980 and 81, I felt instant animosity. And I don't feel that yet with Shire. And so I do wonder, but still, I think there's such a difference between the two teams and the two universities that there's always going to be some ferocity between them. But I've yet to see John Shire behave on the sideline the way Krzyzewski did very early on. And another thing J.J. Redick was a guy that I got to speak with and spend some time with when I was writing the book. And I know that Melvin, you and J.J. knew each other back in high school, if I recall, right?
Yeah.
And J.J. was a guy who was considered the most hated basketball player back in his time at Duke. And yet when you actually got to know him, he was a very entertaining and enjoyable person to be around. And so that was something which a great revelation for me was, that there's a particular animosity among fans that's greater than even, I think, the animosity among players. That's what it struck me, because once I got to know Redick, I really liked the guy. And he used to speak very favorably of Melvin, actually, because I guess you guys played some in the summer together. And he always was impressed by you as a three-point shooter. And you were probably impressed by him that way. But yeah, with John Shire, I just have the feeling that that there will come a time something's going to happen, right? I mean, it just always seems to.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the thing with Coach K when he got there, right? Dean Smith was already established, so Coach K had to pick a fight. Kind of like what Rick Barnes tried to do several years back.
Yes. Yes.
Clemson and all, and now with Hubert and Shire in it together, basically new together. You're right. I think eventually something will happen, but right now it's iffy. And, Shire's not.
I know.
Shire's not on that side of the coin yet. He might soon get there, especially after. Go ahead.
Yeah, it seems almost horrifically congenial, if you know what I mean. It's like, but I think again, in Shire and Hubert, I saw they ran into each other in the summer and apparently had a very nice conversation. I think they both now have 3 kids, and they just, and I think early on, Krzyzewski and Dean did not get along. Now, late in Dean's life, Krzyzewski was very kind to him. He went to the beach and spoke to him, and knelt down and told him he loved him. But that's not how they were for a good portion of their careers. And I think that eventually Krzyzewski came to see what the kind of coach that Dean had been, but both as a basketball coach, but also as a citizen. And I think he came to respect that. But yeah, I mean, Krzyzewski, as soon as he came into Duke, it just, it really upgraded the ferocity between the two teams, in my view.
Yeah, and I told this story after that Final Four game last year. I don't know that North Carolina fans particularly liked it, but I was chatting with the players outside the locker room, and me and Armando Vecata just it was just me and him chatting in the hallway. And I felt somebody come up behind me, and it was Coach K, and he put his hand on Armando's shoulder and just looked at him and said, "Good game. I voted for you for ACC Player of the Year," and walked off. And considering that was after his final game as a head coach, I thought that was a very classy comment for him to make. And it softens the edges a little bit, right? Like everybody wanted to be able to kind of run him out of town, and he does something like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And he had some players that I'll never forget an interaction with Steve Wojciechowski that I had way back in the day, but I'm not going there. I can't do that on this show. Maybe over drinks one day off the air. But Melvin, let me ask you this: as far as the Duke Carolina rivalry, obviously the big game, Marvin's shot, Dean Dome's loud as it's ever been, and all. But what were your best memories of the Carolina Duke rivalry being in it? And what were the worst memories you have?
Well, the worst is losing to them, obviously. But just I was telling when I talked to the younger guys, just that day, leading up to that day, and when you wake up, you can't go anywhere. It's all over the television. It's just such a long day. And by the time you get to the game, it's like, man, what a day! And now you got to get hype and play it. It's just just that's all you think about, right? Like all day leading up to it. It's just such a great environment for basketball. North Carolina is such a great place for this rivalry and basketball in general. Depending on where you're walking, what you got on right there? You got some dirt on your shirt. And they're talking about the Duke sign or whatever. This game, if you don't know about it, the importance of it, they'll school you. You'll get a lesson immediately when you're in North Carolina, getting ready for this game. And wherever you work at, the schools, the homes are divided, some Duke, some Carolina. So it's everything here. It means a lot. Personally, just that last game, senior night, and Marvin getting that offensive rebound and putting it back in. Again, they got so loud in the building, and winning that and hugging Jackie Manuel and Joel Williams senior night, and we go out like that. It was just so much fun. I'll never forget that. I see the posters, the pictures. They run a highlight all day. They're going to run it all day Saturday, those highlights. So it's just so much fun. And to be a part of that, and now I can share it with my kids and the young people I coach. It's like, man, I get questions all day. All Saturday, I'll be answering questions about, those moments. And so it's a lot of fun.
Can I ask you a question right now about those moments?
For sure, go for it.
What was your impression back then of Mike Krzyzewski?
So Coach K and Coach Wojciechowski, they recruited me first, actually. And once Carolina came into the picture, I had to tell. That was an uncomfortable conversation. I had a phone call Coach K to tell him I was considering UNC, and so I was so nervous, I was sweating, and my mom said, "You have to do it." And so calling him and letting him know I was going to go to UNC, that was tough. First game at Cameron, I heard a lot of stories about him, but I guess the ref missed the call in his eyes. And I never heard so many curse words, like the way he put them together, right? So it's like the cultural difference, like how Black people curse and white folk curse. He put so many curse words together. I didn't even get back on defense. I'm like, he could talk to you like that? And the ref was like, okay, coach, like running away from him. I've been trying to mimic that, but he put so many curse words together. And I was in awe that a coach could talk to an official like that. But, and so many stories about Coach K. He's so classy. And I think over the years, my experience, learning, he learned a lot from Coach Smith and vice versa. And I think he actually took a page out of Coach Smith's book, how he brings all alumni back. They're on the bench. And then he sent them off to get coaching job and the family, the brotherhood. So if you pay close attention, that's exactly what Coach Smith used to do, from my experience and the stories I heard about Dean Smith.
That's great stuff there. We're talking with Melvin Scott and Will Blythe. To hate like this. Will, do you think that the rivalry has suffered, or at least the likability or unlikability factor has suffered with the one and done NBA influence? Because quite frankly, once upon a time, I could name, and I'm sure everybody could say this, they could name every player on every team in the ACC growing up. You knew the whole roster. And now the way the season starts, I mean, it took me a couple months to figure out who even played for Duke this year. Does that have an effect these days?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, actually. I think it does have an effect because primarily, though, for Duke, because so many of their players now are one and dones that, they don't, I think, end up having the same kind of, it's just kind of like a brief visit. And I think they have to learn that they're supposed to hate UNC and all that. But I don't think it really happens to the same degree as when you stay 3 or 4 years. And I think that it does make a difference, actually.
Yes, interesting. And Melvin, on that same coin, Baycott, I think it was before the last Duke game, was talking about Jeremy Roach, and he was like, hate him. Don't like him. I mean, they're friends. They've been friends. How much did you guys interact? I know when I was at school, I graduated in 93, national championship year of 93. There were a lot of interactions between Duke and Carolina players, just being in Chapel Hill, it's right down the road. How much did it change when you were there? Was it any different than that? Because at some point it's changed. They don't interact as much as they used to. Maybe it's the fact that they're not around for more than 6 or 8 months. But how was it when you were at Carolina, through that 05 season?
Yeah, maybe it's social media. We actually had to come outside and do things and go to the mall. And now you can shop online and do whatever you want. But no, I mean, those interactions, you'll see them at the barbershop. 40 Below is a barbershop most of us went to. You see them at the malls. It's 6 miles apart, 6, 7 miles. So you'll see those guys, and it's just a head nod. That's it. Not a lot of interaction when I was playing. We knew some of these guys from obviously high school tournaments and All-American camps and things like that. I don't know. I think just the whole social media thing and all that changes things. But yeah, we weren't buddy with those guys. We might see him and say hello, and that's it.
Will, before we let you guys get out of here, mentioned your book, To Hate Like This is to Be Happy Forever. I would think everybody who's read that understands that at least once upon a time, you were an IC message board scroller. I don't know if you actually posted on the boards. But in the beginning of your book, I want to quote a line. Hopefully I don't get into copyright issues by saying this. This is one of my favorite lines about the Inside Carolina message board. But Will, to set the stage, Will's in his apartment in New York, doesn't have cable. He's frantically on his computer trying to keep up with the score of the Carolina Duke game. And this is a couple sentences. Again and again, I hit the refresh button and am transported anew to a message board resounding with rending cries and moans from fellow Carolina obsessives, posting their dismay, miss by brutal miss. It's like tuning in to the distracted mutterings of old men alone on park benches all over America. There are so many of us. That is gold. That is Pulitzer worthy right there for anybody that has been on the Inside Carolina message boards. So I got to ask you,
yes,
are you still a message board patron?
I am a message board fanatic. I am a message board addict. I am on it every single day. Yes, I do post, and I'm completely. It's a reading passion, and I just think it's amazing. Also, I have to say, I really think it's amazingly good journalism. You know, people would think that this is a partisan site, and it is in the sense of the gathering and who and the team that we love. But the journalism is really terrific, and I think that's also something to recommend. And I have to say, there's so many threads I'm completely. I find beloved. There's a great thread that the guy Oatmeal started that you guys probably know as well, and I admire him both as a basketball analyst, but he's practically like a preacher as well. And there's times when I feel like there's a church service here. So that it's just anyway. I'm here every day. I don't think I'm going to miss it for the rest of my life.
Melvin, how much did players pay attention when you were at Carolina?
Did we pay attention to
social media, Inside Carolina message boards, the noise, as Hubert Davis calls it?
Yeah, not a lot. We try to block it out. But senior year, once those message boards, we were on it. It was like, oh man. So now they can't. It's everywhere. They can't put it down. You put your phone down, your Apple Watch is going off with messages and all that stuff. So it's everywhere, man. And people eat it up for sure.
Let me ask before we get out of here, Melvin, tell everybody what you're up to. I know you're at Central Player Development for the women's team, but just sort of shed some light on what you've been up to since your time at Carolina and going forward.
Yes, I played in Europe for 3 years before suffering a career-ending injury. And then I got into coaching as an assistant coach at high school and teaching PE. Then I got into coaching I was director of operations at Tennessee Tech. And then I took a job with George Lynch down in Clark, Atlanta. I was his top assistant for a couple of years there. We did well. Then COVID hit, came back here to North Carolina, and I took a job at the high school where my son was a middle schooler. Now he's high school, so it's fun coaching him. And I was offered a job for the women's program at North Carolina Central. But I told her I wanted to coach my son his first year of high school, so it's been fun. And they were able to still bring me on as a player development. And so that's a lot of fun, just teaching shooting. I always knew I could shoot the ball. I didn't know how well I could teach it. And now at this stage of my life, I think I'm doing well, and I can understand how to teach different people that understand differently concepts of shooting, muscle memory, and things like that. I'm having a blast with it. I have my own LLC called Espresso Shots. So that's a lot of fun. So I'm staying busy every day. I do some sort of skill development, and I'm just a coach teaching skills of shooting, and it's a lot of fun.
Your son's a good shooter too, right, Melvin?
Yeah, I don't tell him that though, but he's actually, if he keeps at it, he'll be way better than I was. He can shoot better than I could when I was in 9th grade, and he had some intangibles that I just didn't have. And I coached this year, and everybody was getting on me because I didn't start him. But I just wanted him to earn his keep and keep working hard. He's a great kid, straight A's. But he can shoot the basketball. Hopefully, if he keep doing well, you guys will read about him and see his talent.
Nice stuff there. Will, what's next? I know the audio portion of your book, or the audio version of your book, came out in the last few months. But what's next for Will Blythe, circa Inside Carolina message board poster?
I wrote a piece for Garden and Gun about Duke and Carolina that came out last March. And I've been asked by this online venue in North Carolina called The Assembly to write some again about what's going to happen with the rivalry. So that's a possibility. And then I'm doing some other work for Esquire recently, not to do with basketball, but those are the pieces that have related to the Duke Carolina rivalry.
Well, To Hate Like This is a masterpiece in the Carolina Duke rivalry. If you haven't read it, if you're watching this or listening to this and you haven't read it, pick it up. It's all over everywhere. Check out the audio version. Melvin Scott, Will Blythe, Tommy Ashley. This has been Inside Carolina's Next Level, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Thank you, guys. It's been a wonderful discussion.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure.
It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
A lot of fun. Thanks, guys.